Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Please remember to like the video and to make sure you are still subscribed. Have want to cover this other article by George Sacroclides. Don't be afraid. So the title is "Can We Be Humans Once Again?" Subtitle: Don't be afraid to enter the doomosphere. It is the door to what comes next. I think I'm part of a very special generation. My middle age started just when Earth officially entered its middle age, the beginning of its decline. I saw the environmental movement shift from save the whales and clean the rivers in the 80s to save the planet in the 2000s. I was having my own full circle moment, just as the planet was having its own. It was almost surreal. After years of being a corporate slave, paying my dues and duties to the soul-wrenching, heartless, and traumatizing system that we call modern civilization and capitalism, I started burning out, just as it became obvious to mainstream media that we had burned out the whole world. It took a while, but I finally made the connection that I did not want to admit at first. We had inflicted on the planet the same exact trauma of exploitation that we had inflicted on ourselves. I do think my generation is special because we all understood this sort of trauma. We have lived it. Gen Xers in our 40s and 50s, we have seen from experience how the system is corrupt from top to bottom. Because it is corruption itself, moral, political, which keeps the system going. We have learned through pain and sweat how capitalism uses you and then throws you away in the general trash bin when it's done with you, just like a plastic wrapper on a sandwich. We have gone through our teens and 20s full of aspiration, hope, and the arrogance of a new generation thinking it is different from the one before. Many of us embraced counterculture movements, studied environmental sciences, were human rights activists until the system sucked us into corporate jobs that feed the CO2 machine, just as it does with the current generation. We became busy trying to survive. I'm seeing this again all around me. I have a word of caution for the new generation. Don't think for a minute you are different from us. Better. We also, like you, tried to rebel. We tried to change the world, and we failed. I'm not saying this to discourage you. I'm actually saying it to empower you even more. The system is powerful. It will suck you into consumption. It will lure you in with salaries. It will shield you from the everyday trauma it inflicts on you and the earth so that you will continue to feed the CO2 machine and the global money pipeline that supports it. It will make you feel warm and fuzzy with memes and new products as it continues its destructive path, as it erodes and erases your humanity and your identity. Don't be afraid to enter the doomosphere. Doomers like me get a lot of bad press these days. We are being accused by both sides of the climate argument of having given up, of being elitist hermits, almost nihilists. While we are certainly not perfect, this isn't true. Doomers may appear apathetic and resigned on the surface, but this is because they are an enlightened species that has already processed its trauma and its anger and can therefore think with clarity and pragmatism, and yes, with a vision of a new world that is way too revolutionary, way too painful for the others to find, the bravery to process and to even contemplate. Boom. That's an excellent sentence. On the flip side of my doomerhood is the fact that I'm radical. I'm beyond what people believe is radical, right? And like, what most progressives or lefties think is a radical, take on the world. Like my radicalism is too much for people to really process, and he is voicing the same sentiment. Because if you tell people like, yeah, you need to shut down corporations, and yeah, you need to nationalize the fossil fuel industry, and yeah, you need to crash the economy on purpose in order to transform the entire economy, that's the only way. That's exactly what it's going to take to fight climate change. People are like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Like, yeah, we really want to do something about this, but we can't do that. If you don't do that, you're not doing anything about climate change. So, sorry. Not going to buy your way to we're not going to buy our ways. We are not going to buy our way to a solution on climate change. That's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. But you can not buy your way to a solution. That's the first thing you can do, is not buy your way to a solution. Um, Anyways, back to the article. We know that capitalism won't save us, and this is why we resist fantasy versions of a Green New Deal. We have reached an almost Buddhist state of acceptance, and while acceptance may appear very similar to resignation on the surface, it couldn't be more different. We, the doomists, actually give a shit more than you could ever imagine. Awareness and acceptance are the beginnings of real change. Process your trauma. I encourage you to feel your trauma, to process it deeply. The new generation especially will get you there faster than mine did. It is being exploited even more than me. It is being thrown into the mind prison of apps and social media, which is a path to mental illness. It is being pushed to the brink financially by a system that is restricting its returns while asking for more investment in school studies and living costs. The system is becoming more aggressive, more traumatizing. It is time to reject it, to throw it in the bin, to be continued. I do rather like that, because I reject... I think there's a difference between being a doomer and being being an outright nihilist. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And I think there's a spectrum, if you will, but my particular brand of doom doesn't rest on we're all screwed, so whatever. That is not my personal outlook. And also want to cover this. The state of global biodiversity is worse than you probably think. And this is from conservationbites.com in very, very tiny script. I often find myself in a position explaining to non-professionals just how bad the state of global biodiversity really, really is. It turns out, too, that even quite a few ecologists seem to lack an appreciation of the sheer magnitude of damage we've done to the planet. The loss of biodiversity that has occurred over the course of our species' time on Earth is staggering. The loss is now truly planetary in scale and caused by human actions, albeit the severity of which is unequally distributed across the globe. While Sandra Diaz and company recently summarized the extent of the biodiversity crisis unfolding well in their recent synopsis of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services report, I'm going to repeat some of their salient summary statements here and add a few numbers. The biomass of terrestrial vegetation worldwide has halved over human history, with a corresponding loss of more than 20% of this realm's original biodiversity. More than 70% of Earth's land surface has already been altered by humans. There have been over 700 vertebrate and nearly 600 plant extinctions recorded since the 16th century, and many more species have likely gone extinct unnoticed. Massive population declines that are the precursors to extinction have also occurred worldwide. Since only 1970, more than 60% of all terrestrial vertebrate individuals have disappeared, such that there are now at least 1 million species threatened with extinction out of an estimated 7.3 to 10 million eukaryotic species on the planet. The total global biomass of wild animals today is less than 25% of what it was during the late Pleistocene. Even insect species appear to be in rapid decline in many parts of the world. There is now less than 15% of the original wetland area that was present during the 18th century. Less than 15% of the original wetland area. And over 3/4 of rivers more than 100 kilometers long no longer flow freely along their entire course. Over 2/3 of ocean area has been compromised by some extent by human endeavor. 2/3. Live coral cover on reefs has been halved since the mid-19th century. Seagrass extent has been decreasing by 10% per decade over the last century. Kelp forests have declined by nearly 40%, and the biomass of large predatory fishes is now less than 1/3 of what it was last century. Of the estimated 0.17 gigatons of biomass of terrestrial vertebrates on Earth today. Most of this is represented by livestock, 59%, and living human beings, 36%. Only about 5% of this total biomass is taken up by wild mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. Even our domesticated species are in decline. Some 10% of domesticated breeds of mammals have become extinct in human history, with more than 1,000 others threatened with extinction. Even cultivated plants are becoming threatened, with about 200 cultivated species threatened with extinction. And global homogenization of food crop species used to feed the world over the last 50 years. All this means that we are now, without a doubt, well within a sixth mass extinction event. Next time someone you know argues that the natural world isn't that poorly off, you can show them this rather depressing list of facts to the contrary. And that is rather depressing. So I'll go off and, ponder that for the next couple hours. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so with the links below. Until next time, peace.